Before we get into the video, I created an Instagram and TikTok account. My IG is at SOFTDRINKTV, and my TikTok is simply at SOFTDRINKTV. If you want, give me a follow on both. I called the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube version of Madden 08 the last great Madden, meaning it was the last Madden title released that I would label great. I called Madden 12 the last good Madden, meaning it was the last Madden title release that I would label good. Now I've finally gotten around to Madden 25, the last half-decent Madden. I don't think 25 was great, or even good, but many people remember the game fondly due to how far Madden has fallen off in recent years. 25 actually had a decent foundation to build upon. The game brought back many features stripped away from Madden 12 and Madden 13, and built upon the improved gameplay. It wasn't very polished, but it was good gameplay for a Madden game. Probably the closest a Madden game has ever gotten to being realistic. Franchise mode, while bare, was a big improvement from Madden 13. Unfortunately, EA never really added to franchise mode after 25. The thing about Madden 25 is that it shouldn't be remembered fondly at all. It should have been extremely forgettable because it was a small step forward and had a long way to go. It was a stepping stone for the franchise attempting to rebuild itself for the next generation of consoles. Had EA actually innovated and improved Madden in the years following 25, the game would likely be unplayable today. Instead, if you boot up Madden 25, a game from 2013 and 2020, you'll find gameplay that is shockingly different than Madden 21's, in a good way, in almost the exact same franchise mode we have today. It's the only Madden on the PS4, Xbox One generation that I would consider playing a solo franchise in. While I've constantly said that Madden 13 ruined the series, 25 was a decent step forward and put EA in position to recapture their glory days in a few years. Instead, I'm sitting here making this video because Madden 25 is somehow the best Madden of its generation. Madden 25 released on 2 generations of consoles. I personally prefer the next-gen version because the loading times on my PS3 are really hard to deal with, but many people prefer the gameplay on the older consoles due to it playing more similar to the much-loved NCAA 14. Both versions of the game, however, have similar physics-based gameplay. The tackling animations feel really organic, and while it can get messy and sloppy at times, it just feels way better than the animation-based gameplay we see today. It needed work, don't get me wrong, especially with all the awkward ragdoll animations, but EA abandoned the Ignite engine a few years later instead of building gameplay to its full potential. The best way I can describe this gameplay is fluid, smooth, and satisfying. If you laid a hit stick on a running back, the result would feel legit due to weight and momentum actually mattering. Foot planting, gang tackles, and blocking looked and felt superior to what we have today. I can actually boot this game up, jump into a game of Play Now, and have fun. This was the last time I could say this about a Madden game. While it wasn't exactly great, it had potential to be great. It's a real bummer that we ended up where we are today. A major highlight of this game is the presentation. Each team had this super hype intro that many of you will remember fondly. The commentary team was Jim Nantz and Phil Simms and actually felt like an NFL broadcast on CBS. Going back and playing this game makes me feel like I'm actually playing a Madden game from the future. The presentation is that much better than 21's incredibly stale and generic commentary team and graphics. Maybe that's why they called it Madden 25. Again though, this is only impressive because of how badly Madden has regressed and stagnated. This should have been surpassed years ago. The graphics are a major highlight here too on the PS4 and Xbox One version of the game. The player models looked great in my opinion, especially compared to today, and stadiums had great atmosphere. The crowd was extra lively and it really felt like an authentic NFL experience. This was also during a time when the read option was taking the NFL by storm, so the playbooks introduced a ton of these plays. Using RG3 or Colin Kaepernick was a blast. Franchise mode brought some necessary features back that 13 took away. It added an owner mode, allowing users to set hot dog prices and whatnot, and it brought relocation teams into the fold. The funny thing is that relocation teams have not changed since Madden 25. At the time though, the franchise improvements were nice, and the news tab with the social media feed was really cool. It would show actual pictures of college prospects in their college uniforms during the season, and prospects had real pictures, which was kind of cool and reminds me of NFL 2K5. You see, Madden 25 deserves a lot of credit for innovating its franchise mode, but the innovations are not going to sound special today because it's basically exactly what we have now. For example, Madden 25 was the first time that scheme was accounted for among players and coaches. Schemes were also not as shallow as just 4-3 or 3-4. There was a base system, attacking, zone blitzing, and hybrid multiple front versions as well. There was also the added layer of what ideal players each system was looking for. Scheme had a major impact on the way you experienced Madden 25. It determined who the AI would target in free agency, in the draft, and in trades. Scheme had an impact on player progression. And when you match the right player to the right coach, it would deliver great results. But signing, drafting, or trading the player who did not fit your scheme would usually not turn out well. Another cool feature this game had was the ability to play a franchise as a former NFL star or a classic coach. You could take Barry Sanders and drop him into the current day NFL and see how he performs. Isn't that cool, being able to use classic players and coaches in a game mode not called Ultimate Team? A fan of my channel named Paul Gaither is really passionate about Madden 25's franchise mode. To me, the mode appears underwhelming because it is more or less the same stale franchise mode we've had for years. But he's sent me emails and left really long comments that have shifted my perspective a bit. If you go back to 2013, these additions that today we brush off as the same old thing were actually quite creative. That said, I still find the franchise mode in 25 to be underwhelming when compared to Madden games of the past, but we need to remember that all the crazy depth and features in the older games weren't exactly great. CPU teams had poor logic. There were no schemes, for example, they would just draft whoever. And most of the cool features like rookie drills were just fluff. Madden 25 was a new foundation that was aiming to only implement features that would make sense and progress the game to new levels of realism. Had this ideology been continued over the years that followed, we likely would have a great Madden franchise mode by now. Of course, we all know that EA basically added nothing since then and broke what worked by lazily slapping minor features over old code with no regard for quality control. Now, I can't talk about Madden 25 without mentioning the name. This game is basically Madden 14, but they named it 25 because it was the 25-year anniversary of Madden. It made the game stand out in stores, but now what? In a few years they are going to release Madden 25 again? Or will they call it Madden 2025? Or maybe Madden 14? I don't know. I think it's something a lot of people are curious about. EA is actually going to have to think for once. Here's the thing about Madden 25. A lot of people remember the game fondly and love it, while a lot of people hate it and think it's a terrible game. Trust me, when this game released, it saw a ton of criticism from players, kind of like what we see today. The ragdoll physics, the lack of features in franchise mode compared to a few years prior, and movement towards live services in game modes like Ultimate Team left a large percentage of the player base unhappy. But the Madden titles that followed were so poor that this game has become well regarded by many. So I won't even call this game good. I say it's half decent. It was alright. And it's the last Madden game I'd call alright. So I guess that counts for something. I want to end this video by giving Paul a shout out. It's easy for me to go online and complain about Madden not being as good as it once was. What can we really do? Well, here's what Paul has to say. Do you know what the real solution is? Get involved in real football. Find an amateur team and get involved in your local community. Frick Madden when you can go coach and play for real, when you can be a part of a real franchise. That is what I did and have been doing. I moved to South America and joined a group of 18 football fans who gathered at a park and turned into 12 teams of tackle football players, and we played international games. I couldn't do it by myself as it takes the interest of the community, but I did my part teaching the game and coaching up coaches. Instead of giving EA your money for Madden and microtransactions, we as a community should be buying shoulder pads, mouth guards, and a nice helmet. Well said, Paul, and thanks for watching.